So why don't you introduce yourself so they know which Dan is which?
I'm Danny Villanueva Jr. I'm the writer, director, and producer.
And I'm Dan Davies, and I played Detective Scott Redmayne.
And you were also responsible for a little bit of that clip.
The Eggy the musical. I was late for it, so I didn't get to see it. What, did you like it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm really hungover.
Well, you can all have to.
Okay.
So, Danny, let's start off with, now we showed it here a few years ago at another indie horror fest, I Love Papa. It was a wonderful short, and I did get the title right, was it? Or,
Don't Cry.
Don't Cry Papa. I am just off on the ass. Don't Cry Papa. I even looked it up ahead of time. What made you jump right from that to doing a feature?
Well, that was a short film that I did that gave me the confidence to pursue doing a larger project. I had done a few short films throughout the years, and there was nothing that really felt like I had a full grasp on the technical aspects, but also the creative aspects of filmmaking to a degree that made me feel like I'm ready to take on a larger project. But once I made Don't Cry Papa, it just felt right. I felt like what was in my head was able to come out in a way that hadn't before. And it was then when I took on that journey doing this film.
Now, it's made up of 3 stories, and it's an anthology. How long did it take altogether to put these together? Because I imagine it took a little while.
Yeah, and one thing is it was made on a micro budget, and we didn't have the money all at once. So because it's an anthology, that format was a benefit to us because we were able to separate the shoots into a long period of time. And over the course of 4 years, we completed the film. So we would film one segment, go broke, figure out, okay, how are we going to continue to make this? But I always had the end wraparound in mind on how to connect everything together. I had the tone and just all of the cinematic language in my head that I knew I wanted to keep consistent throughout. So in the end, it didn't feel like so much like completely different films. You know, I chose to shoot with the same camera, used a lot of the same crew, and we all worked to keep consistency in mind, so it felt like just one solid anthology.
And Dan, how did you get involved with the part of Redmayne? Did you know Danny at a time?
No, and as a matter of fact, that was shot in what, 2017, 2018? Wow, I didn't. I had a baby face, fat little chubby face in that film. So I was like, but I don't even remember, to be honest. I think we shared some common friends, and somebody said something, and you got a hold of me right away. And I remember driving down from Appleton to Kenosha, studying my lines as I was driving, which you really shouldn't do. But I did it, and I really enjoyed it. And I want to just quickly say, too, that I knew the moment I was done filming, I walked off set, and I just had a feeling in my bones that this film was going to be amazing. And conversely, I also have walked off of films where I know it's going to be just horrible. But this, Danny curated such an amazing, welcoming, creative space for everybody. I walked off and I just knew that this film was going to be amazeballs. And I've been involved with over 40 films, and this is my favorite film, by far.
Danny, what made you choose the subject that you did, the kind of tone overall of death and mourning? What was kind of the inspiration for that?
Let's see. Well, there's a few things when I think back on it, like why was I in this kind of headspace where I wanted to talk about such a serious subject matter in a genre that's usually not to be taken so serious. You know, with horror, death is approached in sort of an entertainment fashion. It's over the top and we have fun with it. But I wanted to take a more reality-grounded approach in the subject. Throughout the time, I was raised by my biological grandparents. So they were at an older age. I'm now 33 years old. So when I started this film, my mother was approaching her 90s, as well as my father. They're just 2 years apart. So I knew that I had to like prepare myself for this. I grew up as a mama's boy. I just loved them so much, and I never experienced a close death with someone that was near to me, and I was afraid of it. So I thought, how can I help? How can I put on sort of a shield? And I thought, well, what if I just expose myself to this in this way? And making this film, I had to do a lot of research on the subject. I had talked to funeral directors to get in their headspace and learn about their world. And also I talked to people who were like grieving over recent deaths. Anyone who told me they had lost someone near to them, I would start to ask all these questions. I wanted to figure out what that feeling was like, what I should expect. And still death is such a strange subject. I don't think we'll ever fully grasp it and be comfortable with it. Like when I spoke to these funeral directors, they had brought up how some of these deaths, some of these people that they hold funerals for, it hits them. It hits home for them. They might have a younger son, and if there's a young boy in a casket, that could affect them in that way. And so I just felt like I needed to prepare. And when we finished shooting September of 2019. Once I got into post-production, that February, my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And in 3 months, she had passed away in May. And I was her primary caregiver. So in one room, I'm editing this film that's about death and about this character taking this journey of grief. In the other room, I'm experiencing it firsthand. And I do feel that being able to watch this character that I had created helped me. It took on a completely different meaning, and I saw this film in a different light, and I understood it more than I did before, and I was the one who wrote it, and it was something that I had never experienced, how creating a film and being able to follow this character on this journey and sort of, see how they're dealing with things and apply that to myself. It was just such a unique experience.
Do we have anybody have a question in the audience for?
Yeah, no, I'd just like to say, I think that was absolutely perfect. I think what you have done is a work of art. I think it's a masterpiece. Honestly, I think without death, there might be no horror. So I think what you've done is fucking brave, and you should be proud of every minute of that, man. That was an absolute work of an artist immersed in their craft, and I wouldn't change a minute of it, and I think it's fucking awesome.
So I was wondering, since a good chunk of that film had to be filmed in the cemetery, were there any particularly challenges in having to film in that kind of environment? Because I know, there are mourners, and it's a different environment than if you're filming like a fake cemetery that you just create, from scratch.
Yeah, I had to attend a board meeting to get the approval to begin with, and obviously you can't use like the names that are on the headstones of people. So there was like a ton of VFX work that I had to do because I didn't have a VFX artist. It was tedious to go in and change the name of every gravestone that is clear on the screen.
Did you Photoshop, or how did you?
In After Effects.
After Effects, Roger.
And I strategically used a tripod for most of the cemetery stuff because moving shots would have made it even harder to do all that VFX work. Yeah. So I was aware of that, and I that was something that I had planned ahead of time. But also, Yeah, it was scary because we did choose a part of the cemetery that had older gravestones, so we had hoped that there wouldn't be too many relatives in this area. But we're in the middle of filming. We're huddled around the gravestone that would be Evelyn's, and this van pulls in, and I'm just like, please don't come this direction. And it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it parks like right where we're at. And this little old family gets out of the van and starts walking towards us. I'm like, no, please don't let this happen. And I'm like, what if this is like their family member, and we have all this like dirt to make it look like we have our own flowers and like a crew huddled around it, and they're just walking, and my heart's pounding. I'm like, this is a disaster. And then they walk by, and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, it was scary.
Who else? Yes, in the back.
What was the most challenging scene to film, either both emotionally or technically?
Let's see. I would say, okay, so the segment that Dan Davies is in, it's called Answers. It's the whole serial killer segment. And a lot of that we had shot outdoors, and it was really, really cold. And I just don't do well with the cold. I get like seasonal depression. And there was the interrogation room that I couldn't find the location. We had one that we were supposed to get, and the people just stopped answering. It was part of a school, so that fell through. And I literally had actors flying in, driving from Michigan. The crew was on their way the day of, and I didn't have a location. And I was freaking out. I was sick to my stomach, and I showed up at this high school that was down the street from my house. And I was just in there just like numb, and I was like, I'm looking for a room, just no windows, like I just want just a plain squared room. We're shooting a movie. And this lady was so helpful, and she was like, yeah, we have like these music practice rooms downstairs, you want to go check it out? And for 2 hours she had spent the entire time with me getting us to do all the paperwork, talking to the principal, getting it approved, getting the permit, and within 2 hours we locked down that location. And like I was getting all these texts like, so where are we started? Where are we meeting? And then I was like sending everyone to my house out of all places. It's like, yeah, we're gonna go there. And then finally, just in time, we got that. So that was the biggest challenge for sure.
Anyone else? Yes, in the back. Shelly.
I just want to say that I don't know anything about making movies, but the scene with the high school girl going to the dance, that from a cinematic sense and from an emotional sense was one of the most beautiful pieces of film I've ever seen.
Wow.
Thank you. Yes.
I was going to ask you about that school scene. Was there some choices of just how much to imply and show? Because, I mean, unfortunately, we live in a world where you only have to show that amount, and we all know where that's going. But was there some question of how far you should go to imply what is actually happening?
Yeah, so when I was writing it, I knew that I was approaching a very serious subject matter, and I had to approach it delicately because we were still in the midst, and still to this day, this happens so often, and it's hard for people to talk about it. 2018 is when we filmed that segment, and at the time it was one of the worst years of school shootings. And I just felt like I needed to talk about this in some way. And, in the news, all you hear is like about the killer. And I was like, these survivors, the victims, like those are the people we should be thinking about and talking about. And I really wanted to get into the head of this character and show how her, childhood, her, all of that was just stolen from her, and how she's dealing with this trauma. And yeah, I decided to just leave a lot of blanks because I knew that in America, and this, everyone around the world hears about us. Like, I knew that people could understand what those blanks were. I didn't need to be graphic. I felt like it could easily become distasteful if I'm showing people, getting killed. And so, yeah, I thought, this is how I would want to tell it. Just very suggestive and just more focused on the survivor.
Anybody got, yes, Shelley?
I got another one. For the two cops that were in the interrogation room with the killer, did the actors get to pick who was the good cop and who was the bad cop?
I have so as I'm driving like a maniac from Appleton down to Kenosha area, and I'm getting these texts, the different addresses, and I'm like, oh dear Lord. Once I got on to set though and talked to Danny and met my co-star Adone, and he was just an amazing guy. But I knew that literally I was going to play kind of the nice cop and he was going to play the bad cop. But the weird thing about it is, I go, Danny, tell me about the scene. Well, you're interrogating a ghost. I'm like, he's right here. I can see him. I can touch Peter Knox, Carl Crimwood. So I said, where are my focal? Like, what am I looking at? He goes, you're looking at him. And I'm like, wait. And I was just like, I didn't understand it until I saw it at the Music Box Theater in Chicago. And I went, pardon my language, I swore, I said the F word. I said, frick, man, this is absolutely genius. But I didn't even know. I'm like, what the hell is this? So, but Peter Knox was amazing, the child killer, Carl Crimwood. And what I got to tell you very quickly too, if you notice the entire cast, it was a rainbow of people. So that made me really proud. I'm 3/4 Irish. My grandfather was half Seneca of the Iroquois. So I represented the Irish Indian, but there were everybody else, and almost every color of the rainbow was represented on that film, and it was seamless. And that's what I think all films should be. So I just wanted to get that out.
Actually, I got one question. I hope you guys. Well, first, did anyone have any other questions about I Dream of Psychopomp? See, I pronounced it that correctly. If you don't mind me asking, Danny, you do have Ed Gein the musical. It's being revitalized after 10 years. We got to see a short clip. Could you tell us just a little bit about what's coming up for that?
Sure. Okay, thank you, Mark. Yes, so we're doing a 13th anniversary screening of it. SRS Cinema from Los Angeles picked up the film, and it hasn't been seen in 10 years in any format, any theater. And we're doing it at UW Oshkosh Fox Cities, which is in Menasha at the Perry Hall Cinema, December 2nd. And that's going to be fun. And we might do a showing here eventually at the Times Cinema. So, but yeah, if you want to join us, December 2nd, it's going to be fun. And and it's doing real well. It's the #1 seller right now. And the company's been around for 30 years, so we're real happy with that. So thank you.
And I have a question. What's up for you next, Danny?
Yes, I'm working on a new feature. We're shooting in spring. It's called What Happened to Dorothy Bell. There's not much I can really say at this point. But if you follow my production company pages, How Bizarre Pictures, I can keep you guys up to date with what's next and that project. But it's a lot of fun. This next project's meant to be just pure horror. It's more conventional and fun. This one obviously was more dramatic. So this next one, I need a break from that, and I need to have some fun with some blood and all that good stuff.
And Psychopomp now has distribution, correct?
Yeah, so we have distribution from Terror Films. You can watch it on VOD platforms, so Amazon, Tubi TV, and a few others. So if you liked it, tell your friends to go watch it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for showing up. Round of applause for